So recently I found myself hunting for a new RPG to sink my teeth into and really get lost in. I couldn't help but find myself thinking, I wonder how New World is these days. And because I am who I am and once something is in my mind, I can't get over it, I just had to find out. So I ventured back into Eternum, planning to make a fresh start and going with an open mind and see what New World had to offer me in 2023. Sure, the game had a rocky start, but there must have been a ton of improvements made to the game and overall quality of life by now, right? So just a little history for those unaware. New World is about 2 years old now, having come out in September of 2021 by Amazon Games. I think this game is one of the more interesting pieces in the history of gaming, with one of the fastest rises into massive mainstream success, and possibly an even faster decline into infamy and bad publicity. New World boasts an insanely impressive all-time peak player count of 913,000 concurrent players, sitting at number 7 on the record books for highest ever on Steam. Yet 1 month later, that peak was down to almost 1/9 what it was prior, with no end to the player base decline in sight. Today we see an average peak concurrent player count on any given day of about 15 to 20,000, which while completely respectable and still playable, it's still just mind-boggling. However, like I said, I'm going into this with an open mind and as little bias as I can. And I'm gonna be honest, guys, I was so pleasantly surprised by this game. It kind of blew me away how much better it had gotten over the years. So let's kind of get into why. So I boot the game up, and the first thing we need to do is just choose a server. Easy enough. And as a pleasant surprise, one of the worlds I see is actually just for a fresh start character. No transfers to the server, it's a fresh start world. And with this being a fresh start for me, I choose it. Then we get a little notice that says, players in Lilith, this will be only new characters created on this world, and the characters cannot transfer to this fresh start world. And to me, hey, sounds great. Let's do it. We then are given the option to watch a cinematic, which, to be honest, is a very good hook. I think they did a good job with it. It really makes you get hyped to play the game. But we're not going to spend our time sitting and watching that whole thing together because we need to get in what's really important. The character customization. We all know in RPGs, one of the biggest barriers to entry is just spending half an hour customizing and creating your own character. And in my opinion, I think New World does a pretty good job at this. I think there's a lot of customization options without being too overwhelming. You know, if you're someone who's super into designing your own character and, you know, manipulating every single detail of how they look, you might be a little disappointed by this. But for me, this is more than plenty. I'm completely happy with what they offer. We've got everything from the bald monk look to the Karen cut, all the way up to the TikTok boy for real on God, as I'll call it. But I go a little simple and plain, and just some simple long slick back hair will do. After that, we get to choose our face, skin tone, hairstyle, facial hair, eye color, you know, all the classic things. There's also something in here called features, which to me really just comes down to freckles and birthmarks, followed by any scars you want to put on your character, and then tattoos. I choose to do one little minor scar on the face and no tattoos because it's just a little much for me. And once we get our character customization all taken care of, we then crash land onto Eternum and enter what is really the tutorial of the game. Where at first you're basically gonna learn how to get around, do a little combat, eat, interact with items, do all the basic things that you're gonna do all throughout the game. On top of that, you're gonna learn how to use your weapon mastery upgrades, and this is really like the talent trees of the game, where you use different talents based upon the weapon that you're using, and you gain skill with certain weapon types as you use them throughout the game. But we'll get more into that a little bit later. Overall though, I would say the tutorial does a very good job. It shows you how to, you know, partake in the combat, how to heal yourself, how to traverse obstacles, because there is a little bit of climbing in this game and, you know, getting around obstacles that are in the landscape. I think the game just does a very good job of introducing you to all these features and systems and really set you up to know what you're doing as soon as you get out of it. The tutorial is really a make or break moment for a lot of people when they play the game. I mean, we just got into it, but if they don't like how it feels and if the tutorial is boring or sucks, that could be it for them. They could just close the game right then and there and say, I'm done. But I would find it pretty hard for anyone to have reached that point with this tutorial. Good job, Amazon. So you emerge from your crash landing, your tutorial, and you enter the real world of Eternum. And honestly, the first thing that I really notice is just how good the game looks. And this is something I really appreciate all the way through as I'm still playing it now. The game just looks great. I think as we play MMOs, we have a certain expectation for graphics. We usually find that like abilities and spells and things like that often look really good, but the actual characters and sometimes the world, maybe the cities, leave a little bit to be desired. It doesn't really look like a AAA game. Things will have more of a stylistic approach or kind of goofy and cartoony. And I love hearing from you guys on like subjective stuff like this. So just kind of let me know in the comments, what is your favorite MMO in terms of like style and graphics and visuals? Let me know down below. But man, New World looks good. The water looks amazing. The environment looks great. The buildings and the towns and the cities feel alive and look amazing. Characters and the armor and the NPC, they all look like they have a lot of detail and just polish put into them. I feel like this really works in favor of the game with the immersion element. Like I really enjoy being in the world that they made. Eternum feels good. And I mean, to be fair, I'm trying to set all my previous, memories of the game aside. I remember even back then thinking this game looks amazing. And I really think it's just come even further since then. So definitely a great looking game overall. And now getting back to the immersion, it really does feel like you're in sort of just like a colonial era world, especially when you're in a zone like Everfall. I mean, that zone just feels like you're in like colonial America or something, with the always autumn feel, all the yellows and browns and just rustling leaves and things. It's a very good feeling immersive world. It's got this interesting blend too of like American colonial times, but also like Spanish conquistador mix-ins. It's very unique. And one of the first things I like to do when I get inside of a new RPG is just open up the map and really see, do I think it's big? Do I think this world is gonna be big enough to keep me interested for a long time? And for some reason, when I opened up New Worlds and looked at it, I didn't think, oh wow, that's a big map, which I kind of was disappointed about. I expected to look at it and be like, oh wow, there's so much to see. However, as I played the game and realized how much space I was covering and how little of the map I'd seen, I realized the map is quite big. And this kind of continued as I would see more and more of the map. I would realize, there's still so much more out there. So in the end, it is quite a big map, and I definitely haven't seen all that it has to show me. So I'm excited to see the rest. And I guess before we go any further, I can explain kind of what the premise is of the game and what is the big bad we're facing. And believe me, I'm not one to slow down and read quest text, so I'll give you the best I can. Basically, there's a woman who is upset with the fact that humans are limited in some way. And then she finds out there's a way you can gain a certain power so that you can kind of unlock your full potential as a human, and the human race can become more superior. And through that, I don't know, she becomes corrupted and starts corrupting other things, and things turn red, and we need to stop them. I don't know, man. I'm not here for the lore. I'm here to play the game. So anyways, moving forward. Now, of course, what I think a lot of people are interested in, and of course is a big deal to me myself as well, is how does the combat feel? Because this game definitely varies away from a lot of the mainstream games, especially like World of Warcraft, where this is actually like a game where you're dodging and you're not just auto locking onto something, you're actually fighting it 1v1 kind of freestyle, if you will. And me personally, I have found myself loving it. I think it feels great. It's like a good mix between like some kind of Skyrim gameplay mixed with Guild Wars 2. It works. Now, is it a super difficult combat with a super high skill ceiling and skill expression and all that? Not really. It feels a little bit face roll, hack and slash, get in there and bash them up. Obviously that depends on which weapon you're using, but you get my drift. But I think there is fun in that simplicity. I don't think everything needs to be insanely hard or built around a hard, rigid rotation. And the combat of the game feels very good. It feels pretty fluid. I mean, it's not perfect, but I do enjoy the skill expression of, dodging attacks as they're coming in and just feeling like you have more control of your character. You're the one actually pushing the button and making them swing. As we mentioned earlier, there's the weapon mastery system where the character isn't locked by a class or anything like that. You basically can equip any weapon of any type, and you can increase your mastery for that weapon as you use it. This pretty much means you can assume any playstyle with any character. And not only can you choose it initially, you can switch to whatever you want going forward. And I think a lot of people really like that freedom. Whereas in other games, you might initially choose to play a warlock, and you're always locked into a DPS caster playstyle. In this, you might choose to use a fire staff initially, and some sort of a healer staff as a secondary weapon. But after a while, maybe get tired of that and switch to a sword and board and using a bow and arrow as your backup. You have the freedom to do that. If you do switch your weapon, you're going to have to kind of restart with the weapon mastery and start gaining the mastery through that specific weapon type. However, it doesn't take very long to catch your weapon mastery back up to where your others are, and the weapon mastery tree is a nice little satisfactory positive feedback loop that feels good as you're training it. Outside of the weapon masteries tree, we have the attribute skill training, and you'll gain points to apply to these as you level up. You'll also gain these from your items as you equip them. Say you have a bow that has +7 dexterity, that's going to apply to this tree as well. There is a nice little graphic next to each attribute that'll show you what will become stronger if you put points into it. So dexterity, for instance, we're going to increase the strength of our bow, guns, and spears. And strength, we're going to increase the damage of our great axes, great swords, hatchets. With intelligence and focus being more focused on the caster items in gameplay, and constitution dealing with the amount of health we have. I've chosen so far with this character to basically go into full dexterity, kind of glass cannon, and I've been loving it so far. The combat itself feels pretty good. I mean, it's a little tricky at first getting used to the dodge timing. In some games, I feel like they want you to dodge at the very last second, but this one, they definitely want you to dodge a little earlier, because if they're already finishing the animation, you're probably gonna get hit. So it's kind of fun with playing around, getting used to, how to dodge, when to dodge, that kind of stuff. You can end up with a maximum of 3 different abilities for each weapon type you'll use. For instance, with the bow I'm using, which scales with a dexterity tree, I have an ability that shoots an explosive shot and does an AoE. a shot that impales through them and just, passes through multiple enemies, and then another that shoots off 3 rapid fire shots with increasing damage with each arrow. And these 3 abilities, of course, tie back to the points that we've placed within our weapon mastery tree, and these can really be adjusted at any time. And that's one thing I think I really appreciate with the combat in this game is you don't often get to have kind of an FPS feel within an MMO. There's not many MMOs where you're actually aiming a gun or a bow and it matters how you shoot it. Oftentimes it just has like a repetitive auto attack system or something like that where you're not actually drawing every shot. So it's kind of cool to play a game where they're kind of mixed and it's hybridized. And I get it, some people might not like this. They might not want to have to aim their spells. They just want to cast them at the right time and things like that. Totally can appreciate that, but I don't know, feels like a good switch up for me. But on to the next thing, and what I want to talk about is the questing, because one of the first things that I really struggled with the game when it first came out was just it felt like there weren't enough quests. It really got to a point where I felt like I just kind of run drive quests and I just needed to grind mobs or professions to get anywhere with leveling. But now here in 2023, the game is loaded with quests, and honestly I keep finding more and more. It's almost overwhelming sometimes. And not only additional side quests, there's definitely a lot more to the main story where I just feel like there's always an adequate amount for me to do, where I'm not really just getting bored, because and I think a lot of others have really gotten used to and enjoy having a steady progression of quests to guide us along our leveling experience. And I definitely appreciate that they've gone ahead and increased the volume of these quests a lot, so it feels good. Just being completely honest, guys, I haven't actually looked up patch notes or anything about the changes that were actually implemented into the game. When I said I wanted to go in bias free, I truly meant it. I kind of just wanted to go in and see how I felt about it, how the game felt. I haven't actually looked up what they've changed. I kind of just wanted to see how it felt. And I mentioned that because to me, it feels like leveling is a lot faster. By the time I feel like I got to 20 in this game, it started to become a little bit of a slog. It started to really slow down and become difficult. Maybe that was just because of the lack of quests, or maybe that was just because the level XP requirements were really jumping up. But now, with the more abundance of quests and potentially them just requiring less XP, I'm guessing it's that. But it feels like the leveling is much, much faster. And again, maybe it's not any less to get your levels up. Maybe the XP requirements are still the same. Like I said, I haven't actually looked up the patch notes or anything. I don't want to. I just want to experience the game kind of, without reading anything. But to me, it feels like leveling is much smoother and much faster. Just a small note on top of everything is the sound design in this game is pretty phenomenal. I mean, the sounds when you're doing your gatherings for your professions, like chopping down trees and mining ore, it sounds so good, like no other game I've ever heard before. There can be a few times here and there that maybe the dialogue sound gets a little wonky with like reverbs and stuff, but the actual environmental sounds, oh man, this game sounds phenomenal. There's also a classic carrying load and equip load where pretty much you can only carry so much weight of items, and you can only equip so much weight in items if you want to be able to dodge a certain way. There's a light, medium, and heavy threshold where if you are in the light threshold, you'll basically do like a full roll. If you're in a medium threshold, you'll do like a step back dodge. And if you're in the heavy, you basically kind of like duck. You're not going very far, let's put it like that, which I think totally makes sense. And also, you're probably less likely to need to dodge things as often if you're in super heavy armor. And I think the key is basically just to be in the top of whatever level you want to be in. So if you're in medium, be at the very top of medium without going over. But if you're playing in the bottom of heavy, you might as well just go full out and get really heavy armor. And outside just the normal power increase that comes with leveling up in an RPG game, in New World, there's also what's called leveling rewards. Now, these rewards can come in the form of more bag space, upgrades to your tenting capabilities, which is really just like a mobile respawn point, being able to wear now rings and amulets, and also player housing, which I think is really cool. I think something that's a bit underappreciated of, how much players actually want it is player housing. Just a little spot of the world which you can make and create to be your own. It goes a long way with a lot of players. In a New World, there's just an insane amount of stuff you can do to customize your house. It's really pretty impressive. And what I also really like about the customizations when it comes to the player housing is it ties back into the profession system, which I guess it makes sense now to just talk about professions in New World. And they're a huge part of the game. We had already talked a little bit about the gathering professions, but I don't know why they're just so satisfying to do in New World. Whether it just be going out to chop down some trees, gather some ore, skinning animals that you're killing for quests. This game just does it so well. I can't explain why it's so satisfying, but they did great with it. And with gathering professions comes crafting professions, which it seems have kind of been completely reworked since the last time I played. Before, it was kind of that old school MMO leveling experience for professions where you just make 50 of one of the most affordable things or the cheapest thing to make reagent wise until you got to the next cheapest thing that you could use for the next 50 levels. And it was pretty much just rinse and repeat until you got to the cap level. On top of this, it required farming an absurd amount of materials. I just remember it being hundreds of thousands of reagents need to be gathered. It was ridiculous. So the new system now, with first craft bonuses being a huge part of your experience that you get while leveling up crafting professions, works out really well. It really promotes and makes you want to, craft a bunch of unique and different things at least once, because you get a huge benefit for doing so. So no longer are you just creating 50 iron longswords to get 1 through 50 weaponsmith. You want to make one of everything, and then also do the town boards to get experience for the projects they have there. Because every so often the town board in the center of the town is going to give you a little quest or thing to do just to build up an armor set or something, and you can turn that in for some experience in your crafting. There's just a good amount of diversity in the ways to level up your crafting professions now that I think they did a really good job in improving upon it from the launch. Also, you get experience from every craft and gather you do in this game, so there's always like a good positive feedback loop into that experience, and just it really promotes you doing crafting very well in this game. Also feel like it's worth mentioning that many people might just not hop back onto this game because they assume it's super dead, but the server I'm playing on at peak hours is at around 1,800 players. The servers cap out at 2,000, so I mean, they have reduced the number of the servers or worlds, whatever you want to call them, but in that sense, they've made them actually pretty populated and they feel super alive. Like every city I go into, it feels very full, which in an MMO, you really want to feel that. So huge benefit for the game right now. Well, guys, like I said earlier, I mean, the game has impressed me pretty much in all aspects of it so far. I mean, I really expected to have quite a few things to gripe about, but at this point, I'm not really finding too much. I mean, I still have so much more to explore and get into. But unironically, I'm very much looking forward to continuing to play this game going forward. Kind of expected to get to this point, have enough to do a review, and then just want to leave it behind. But I'm still absolutely feeling like I want to get back into Aeternum and, see what kind of trouble I can get into. I mean, that really tells me all I need to know. I mean, has the game improved and gotten a lot better over the years? Yeah, absolutely. Are there still a few negatives to the game? Most definitely. But do I think it's worth your time? Absolutely. I mean, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that this is a good game. I mean, like I said, I still have a lot more to see, and I plan on making another one of these videos kind of following up on this. But at this point, I'm about 40 hours in, and I'm still looking forward to getting on every day. So if you're looking for a new RPG experience, I can pretty much recommend this game. If you're not entirely sure if it's for you, maybe wait until it goes on a sale or something. I mean, I still would recommend it. And overall, just glad I got back into the game. Happy I picked it back up. You guys also need to let me know, have any of you gotten back into New World recently and been kind of impressed like I have? Have you not touched it since launch because it just left such a bad taste in your mouth? Did this video make you feel like actually getting back on New World? I hope it did. But either way, guys, I appreciate checking out the video and watching all the way to the end. I'm hoping to really start posting videos more regularly going forward. And of course, make sure to like the video if you liked it. Give me a subscribe if you like what I'm doing here, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.